Welcome back to Fall Asleep to This. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and start The Exorcist. Now, previously on this channel, we had attempted a series at doing The Exorcist, but it just did not work out the way that we felt it should work out, and it was a project that we ended up just kind of giving up on. So, today I'm just going to start reading the prologue for The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, and we're just going to see where it goes, what happens with it. If you have the book with you, you can go ahead and grab your copy and whip it out. We're going to go ahead and start. I am currently looking at the page that says Prologue, Northern Iraq. Now, before I get into this story, to reading it, I should just go ahead and disclose that I have attempted to read this prologue about 4 different times this morning that I am recording this. And each time I am stopping because the way that it's written, there's so many small sentences, there's so many small little unimportant details that it's like, I get it. When you're reading, you probably want to try to paint as much of a picture as you can. But when people start to get into extreme detail on to try to say that someone has glaucoma and they're like, oh, it's like an egg that has been bleached over by blah, 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 blah. It's like, just say his eyes were white from glaucoma, you know? That's all you have to say. Anyways, we're just going to go ahead and get into it. I might stop and make a couple of comments here and there just to try and figure out what is going on, because sometimes when sentences are written so poorly, it makes you lose your train of thought because you're reading 6 unnecessary words that are describing the previous 6 unnecessary words that are going to then describe the following unnecessary 12 words. That's just how these authors work, and I can't stand classic literature, but let's get into it. Prologue, Northern Iraq. The blaze of the sun wrung pops of sweat from the old man's brow. Yet he cupped his hands around the glass of hot, sweet tea as if to warm them. He could not shake the premonition. It clung to his back like chill, wet leaves. The dig was over. The till had been sifted, stratum by stratum, its entrails examined, tagged, and shipped. The beads and pendants, glyptics, phalli, ground stone mortars stained with ochre, burnished pots, nothing exceptional. An Assyrian ivory toilet box. And man. The bones of man. The brittle remnants of cosmic torment that once made him wonder if matter was Lucifer, upward groping back to his God. And yet now he knew better. See, that was a stupid sentence if you're reading it. Anyways. And yet now he knew better? That's not a... Anyways. The fragrance of licorice, plant, and tamarisk tugged his gaze to poppied hills, to reeded plains, to the ragged, rock-strewn bolt of road that flung itself headlong into dread. Northwest was Mosul, east Erbil, south was Baghdad and Kirkuk, and the fiery furnace of Nebuchadnezzar. He shifted his legs underneath the table in front of the lonely roadside chakana and stared at the grass stains on his boots and khaki pants. He sipped at his tea. The dig was over. Didn't he already say this? Anyways, the dig was over. What was beginning? He dusted the thought like a clay fresh find, but he could not tag it. Someone wheezed from within the chekana. The withered proprietor shuffling, if you're confused what a chekana is, it's basically like a tea house, like a little shed where you can drink some tea and stuff. The withered proprietor shuffling toward him, kicking up dust in Russian-made shoes that he wore like slippers. Groaning backs pressed under his heels. The dark of his shadow slipped over the table. See, that's an unnecessary, who cares if the shadow... Anyways, whatever. Kaman chai chawaga? The man in khaki shook his head, staring down at the laceless, crusted shoes caked thick with debris of the pain of living. The stuff of the cosmos, he softly reflected. Matter. Yet, somehow finally spirit. Spirit and the shoes were to him but aspects of a stuff more fundamental, a stuff that was primal and totally other. The shadow shifted. The Kurd stood waiting like an ancient debt. The old man in khaki looked up into eyes that were damply bleached as if the membrane of an eggshell had been pasted over the irises. Glaucoma. Once he could not have loved this man. That sentence doesn't make sense. Once he could not have loved this man. Once he could not have loved this man. Twice he would. 3 times. Don't even get him started. What a stupid sentence. Anyways, okay, move on. He slipped out his wallet and probed for a coin among its tattered, crumpled tenants. A few dinars, an Iraqi driver's license, a faded plastic calendar card that was 12 years out of date. It bore an inscription on the reverse. It read, "What we give to the poor is what we take with us when we die." The card had been printed by the Jesuit missions. He paid for his tea and left a tip of 50 fils on a splintered table the color of sadness. He walked to his Jeep. The gentle rippling click of a key sliding into ignition was crisp in silence. For a moment he waited, feeling at the stillness. Clustered on the summit of a towering mound, the fractured rooftops of Erbil hovered far in the distance, poised in the clouds like a rubbled, mud-stained benediction. The leaves clutched tighter at the flesh of his back. So does he actually have leaves on his back, or is it just the feet? Like, seriously, like... This is why we invented video. This is why video and movies were invented, because unnecessary details like this. Something was waiting. Alamak chawaga. Rotted teeth. The Kurd was grinning, waving farewell. The man in khaki groped for a warmth in the pit of his being and came up with a wave and a mustard smile. It dimmed as he looked away. He started the engine, turned in a narrow, eccentric U and headed toward Mosul. The Kurd stood watching, puzzled by a heart-dropping sense of loss as the jeep gathered speed. What was it that was gone? What was it he had felt in the stranger's presence? Something like safety, he remembered, a sense of protection and deep well-being. Now it dwindled in the distance with the fast-moving jeep. He felt strangely alone. Okay, so does that imply that it's the man? Like, the man had shit, like, he had stuff that he stole from the ground of this person's land. Is that what he's feeling? Is that what the book is trying to imply to us? That this Arab man is feeling that he has been robbed by the white man? Or is it implying that the Arab man loved the white man and wants the white man to stay because he's the white man? I don't know. Continuing. The painstaking inventory was finished by 10 after 6. The Mosul curator of antiquities, an Arab with sagging cheeks, was carefully penning a final entry into the ledger on his desk. For a moment he paused, looking up at his friend, as he dipped his pen point into an ink pot. Stupid sentence. The man in khaki seemed lost in thought. He was standing by a table, hands in his pockets, staring down at some dry, tagged whisper of the past. Okay, side note. If you hear me pausing, it's because there's punctuation in this book that's telling you to pause. So, again, I think this guy, William Peter Blatty, is fucking stupid, unnecessary, the kind of person that would just drag something on and on and on and on and on and on and on just because he likes the idea of people listening to him, likes the idea of talking. He's one of those people. You can just tell. The curator observed him, curious, unmoving, then returned to the entry, writing in a firm, very small, neat script. Then at last he sighed, setting down the pen as he noted the time. The train to Baghdad left at 8. He blotted the page and offered tea. The man in khaki shook his head, his eyes still fixed upon something on the table. The Arab watched him, vaguely troubled. What was in the air? There was something in the air. He stood up and moved closer, then felt a vague prickling at the base of his neck as his friend at last moved, reaching down for an amulet and cradling it pensively in his hand. It was a green stone head of the demon Pazuzu, personification of the southwest wind. Its dominion was sickness and disease. The head was pierced. The amulet's owner had worn it as a shield. Evil against evil, breathed the curator, languidly fanning himself with a French scientific periodical, an olive oil thumbprint smudged on the cover. His friend did not move. He did not comment. Is something wrong? No answer. Father. The man in khaki still appeared not to hear, absorbed in the amulet, the last of his finds. After a moment, he set it down, then lifted a questioning look to the Arab. Had he said something? Nothing. They murmured farewells. At the door, the curator took the old man's hand with an extra firmness. My heart has a wish, Father, that you would not go. His friend answered softly in terms of tea, of time, of something to be done. No, I meant home. The man in khaki fixed his... Okay, just a side note again. This quote, is the man talking to the father or is the father responding? The curator took the old man's hand with an extra firmness. My heart has a wish, Father, that you would not go. Then his friend answered softly in terms of tea, of time, of something to be done. No, I meant home. Okay. So the Arab man is speaking to the white man and saying, I don't want you to go. The man in khaki fixed his gaze on a speck of boiled chickpea nestled in the corner of the Arab's mouth. Yet his eyes were distant. Home, he repeated. The word had the sound of an ending. The States, the Arab curator added, instantly wondering why he had. The man in khaki looked into the dark of the other's concern. He had never found it difficult to love this man. Okay, but the other man, you couldn't love him once. Goodbye, he whispered, then quickly turned and stepped into the gathering gloom of the streets and a journey home whose length seemed somehow undetermined. I will see you in a year, the curator called after him from the doorway. But the man in khaki never looked back. The Arab watched his dwindling form as he crossed a narrow street at an angle, almost colliding with a swiftly moving droshky. Its cab bore a corpulent old Arab woman, her face a shadow behind the black lace veil draped loosely over her like a shroud. He guessed she was rushing to some appointment. He soon lost sight of his hurrying friend. Okay, so you see, why did he give us the details of the old lady inside of the cab that he almost ran into? Like, that was unnecessary. That was stupid. That was a waste of breath, a waste of ink, a waste of print. Are you just trying to, like, buff out the fucking runtime of this book? I don't know. The page count, the word count, you get paid by words. I don't understand. Are there people that get paid per word? I know that's a thing sometimes. Okay, let's just move on. The man in khaki walked, compelled, shrugging loose of the city. He breached the outskirts, crossing the Tigris, nearing the ruins. He slowed his pace, for with every step the inquit presentment took firmer, more horrible form. Yet he had to know. He would have to prepare. A wooden plank that bridged the Kausar, a muddy stream, creaked under his weight, and then he was there. He stood on the mound where once gleamed 15 gated Nineveh, feared nest of Assyrian hordes. Now the city lay sprawled in the bloody dust of its predestination, and yet he was here. The air was still thick with him, that other who ravaged his dreams. A Kurdish watchman, rounding a corner, unslung his rifle and began to run toward him, then abruptly stopped and grinned with a wave of recognition and proceeded on his rounds. The man in khaki prowled the ruins, the temple of Nabu, the temple of Ishtar. He sifted vibrations. At the palace of Ashurbanipal he paused, then shifted a sidelong glance to a limestone statue hulking in situ, ragged wings, taloned feet, bulbous, jutting, stubby penis, and a mouth stretched taut in a feral grin. The demon Pazuzu. Abruptly, he sagged. He knew. It was coming. He stared at the dust, quickening shadows. He heard dim yappings of savage dog packs prowling the fringes of the city. The orb of the sun was beginning to fall below the rim of the world. He rolled his shirt sleeves down and buttoned them as a shivering breeze sprang up. Its source was southwest. He hastened toward Mosul in his train, his heart encased in the icy conviction that soon he would face an ancient enemy. Okay, so that prologue was only like 4 or 5 pages, and it was just a drag to read. I am not looking forward to the rest of the book, if I'm being very honest with you, but we are going to complete the book this time. Doing some research here while editing, and I googled this thing on Pazuzu, and it basically just explained that Pazuzu is not actually, like, historically not an evil demon thing. Pazuzu is the demon that is going to possess the little girl in The Exorcist. However, in reality, it was just chosen by like the author because of his image. Like he stands on 2 legs, he has human arms that end in claws, he has 2 pairs of wings, a scorpion tail. He has a snake-headed erect penis. He has a horned bearded head and bulging eyes and a snarling canine mouth. But like again, in reality, Pazuzu was actually like someone that you would call upon to protect you from another demon that would go after newborns and like pregnant mothers. But in this movie, this story that we're about to consume, the priest has like history with Pazuzu, and the prologue was literally just setting up the fact that the priest has a history with Pazuzu, and the priest is going to go and exorcise Pazuzu from the little girl when the actual story actually starts.